I'm in the garage today and we are about to change spark plugs on my Yamaha VX Limited with the TR1 motor. This is Yamaha's 3-cylinder engine, and you can see right here, these are our spark plug coil packs right here. We're going to be taking those out. I'm going to show you the spark plugs I use and a quick process on how I change the spark plugs on this Yamaha TR1. This applies to most any of the TR1 models. Should be the same spark plug unless you've got, say, this motor in a boat. Could be tuned differently, so just double check which one you have. This one is considered the TR1 high output, even though there's a smaller version of this motor, or maybe it's detuned a little bit. So this one has a specific spark plug and a specific gap on those plugs that we'll review during this video. Okay, first things first, we've got the NGK spark plugs here. These are the CR9EB, normally stock number 6955. I only use NGK spark plugs on this engine, and I believe that too is what Yamaha recommends. You have to get 3 of these. I buy these in bulk. See if you can see that part number there. I buy these in bulk. They're a little bit cheaper when you do that, so I may buy 12 at a time, so I'll have some on standby. The gap on these is 0.32. Another thing I always like to do when I buy spark plugs for something, I go ahead and write the gap on the box, so hopefully you can see that where I wrote 0.32, and I'm just going to use just a standard gap gauge here that you get at any auto parts store, where you just slide the plug and get the gap you need and then pull it off in that direction. First thing you're going to want to do is make sure that your battery is disconnected, and mine are not in this wave runner yet because we're taking these out of winterization. And what we're going to do is loosen these 10mm bolts, and then after we do that, we'll unplug these plugs. If you had a bigger motor than this, you want to make sure you don't mix these up. This wiring harness is tied pretty nice and neat where you won't really get these mixed up. But I do really like to just work on one coil pack at a time, even though I'll take all these bolts out, and then I'll take this connector loose and take the one coil pack out. I'll finish that spark plug and then put that coil pack back in. Once I've got all these bolts out, I like to store them right here because there's a lip and it won't let that stuff fall back into the motor. If you don't want to put them there, I recommend some type of magnetic tray. Like I mentioned, I take one coil pack out at a time and I will set that out of the way. That lets me know this is the one I'm working on. And then once we're done with this plug, we'll put that pack back on and we'll go back and tighten those two 10mm. Right now though, you need a 5/8 socket, a spark plug socket. It's going to have a rubber insert in there. You're just going to need an extension, put it down in the hole, and then you're just going to loosen that spark plug. It should not be too tight. And just go ahead and take those out one at a time. If you're using the correct socket, you should be able to lift that spark plug out once it's completely loose, and that rubber insert will pull the spark plug up for you. Once you've got your new spark plug, you're going to put it on your gauge tool, and you're going to move it to the proper gap. In this example, this motor is set to 0.32, and on mine, each one of these notches equals 1 point there. So I'm right now at 0.32. Once you get it to where that is, you can pull it off your gauge just by twisting it out like that. If for some reason the gap is larger than the setting you need to go, you can tap this electrode down a little bit and then you can open it back up using your gauge. To insert the plug back into the motor, I put the plug just right there at the edge of the spark plug socket. The reason being is I don't want it to grip it too tight, because sometimes when you go to pull this back out, the socket can get stuck down there. You may have to get a different type of locking extension if that happens to you, but I barely put it here on the edge, and I do not tighten this portion with the wrench. I do this by hand to make sure I'm not cross-threading the plug in, and that helps me get the plug started correctly without any cross-threading. And then I will pull that out, and I go with a regular 5/8 socket to finish tightening that up. Once I have the plug hand tight, I will now put my ratchet on there, and I will tighten quarter turn. And then I loosen that plug back up, and then I will come back again just before quarter turn. All right, now that the spark plug is tight, we're going to put this coil pack back in. One thing you want to watch for is that this rubber grommet goes over this piece of the aluminum. You don't want it to get pinched. You want to make sure it's fully seated. So we're just going to push that down, and then I'm going to hand tighten these 10mm back in. And then we're going to take our wrench and we're just going to do a quarter turn on that. Before we go to the next coil pack, just plug that one back in. Now you can take this coil pack out. Remember, switch back over to your 5/8 socket there that's used for a spark plug. Should be able to loosen that up. And then you can loosen this by hand the rest of the way. And then pull your spark plug up. I've already gapped this spark plug to 0.32. I'm barely pushing it into my spark plug socket there. Lower it down in and tighten this in by hand. Once you've done that, take that socket out. Put your regular 5/8 socket back on. You can take your wrench, line it up. I like to line it up across the motor like that. Make sure it's tight. Once you're there, you can line it back up. Quarter turn. Loosen it up. Hand tight again. And then go half of that turn. Repeat the same step of putting that coil pack in. Make sure that the rubber gasket is around the aluminum there. Get your 10mm bolts back in. Do this by hand. Then take your wrench and you're going to go quarter turn. And then plug that pack back in. Last one, take your coil pack off. You've got your spark plug socket with the rubber insert. Loosen that up. And take that out by hand. You've got your spark plug socket with the rubber insert. Plug is gapped at 0.32. Hand tighten this in until it stops. And then take your wrench. You're going to go quarter turn. Loosen that. Hand tighten again. And you're going to go half that quarter turn. Put your last coil pack back on. Again, making sure that that rubber boot goes over the aluminum. Put your 10mm bolts in. Hand tighten those. Quarter turn. Quarter turn. And now you can plug that one back up. That completes my spark plug change on this Yamaha TR1 motor. This is in a Wave Runner VX Limited 2017. Hopefully this information was useful or helpful for you, and if it was, please subscribe and share. And that's to the point.